Japan Station is made possible in part by Patreon support. If you would like to make sure that I can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Japan Station.
Welcome to Japan Station, a production of japankyo.com. This is the podcast where we teach you everything you should know about Japan, plus a few other things. I'm your host, content creator, founder of japankyo.com, and lifelong Japan enthusiast, Tony R. Vega. Today I have another, I guess you could say, a bonus episode. This is an episode that I originally released as an episode of Japanese Plus Alpha. This was a podcast that I was producing for my $3 a month Plus Alpha Patreon supporters. I produced something like 15 or 16 episodes of this. I think I was doing this several years ago, like maybe 3-4 years ago. And I haven't been doing it lately, but I've got this back catalog there over on the Patreon, and I think this is like the 5th episode that I've made public. So this is an episode about the Japanese term purasu arufa, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about the term puramaizero. And in this episode, I actually say that I don't think I've used puramaizero in any regular capacity. Actually, recently I've used it a few times. I usually use it in a rather joking way. So, it is a word that comes up every once in a while. But anyway, just like in the other episodes, this is a deep linguistic dive into terms and words that I find interesting in the Japanese language. There are other episodes like this in this feed, so if you enjoyed this one, go back. I've been releasing them once a month for the past few months, so go check those out. And of course, there's more over on the Patreon, japankyo.com/Patreon. Links down below. Every little bit does help. If you want to support, I would be very, very thankful. All right, enough of me. I'll be back very soon with another episode. In the meantime, hope you enjoy this one. From japankyo.com, this is Japanese Plus Alpha, a podcast about the Japanese language and its various quirks. I'm Tony Vega, and today we are talking about plus alpha.
Plus alpha.
So yes, we are finally talking about plus alpha, and that may sound familiar to you because, well, this podcast is called Japanese Plus Alpha. And you may also remember my explanation of plus alpha from the introductory episode to this podcast, the episode 0. And, well, in a nutshell, plus alpha just means something extra, a bonus, something that you get on top of something else. Like when you're purchasing something, you might get plus alpha, a little bonus, a little extra something. And it's important to note here that plus alpha is specifically something good, right? Or at least it's intended to mean something good. And you're most likely going to hear this term used in marketing, sales, business type situations. Not exclusively, but just because of the nature of this word, you're more likely to hear it in that sort of situation. So, for example, if you go to a Japanese electronics store to sign up for internet because they have those little booths there, and so the person is trying to sell you on a more expensive plan, they might say that plus alpha, you're going to get this if you sign up for this more expensive plan. Or you might hear it when you're signing up for a cell phone plan or some other kind of subscription or something expensive that you're going to buy. Like I said, it's very commonly used in that sort of businessy marketing sales sort of situation. It's just a fancy, slick, shiny word that a salesperson might throw at you to try to convince you to get something else and spend a little bit more money. I don't remember learning purasu arufa in a textbook. I probably just learned it when I moved to Japan. And I have a very vague memory of dealing with some sort of salesperson, and they were using this word a few times here and there. And at first I didn't quite get it, but I quickly figured out from the context, because just it's pretty obvious when you're in that situation. And if you understand like the rest of the words they're using, then you can figure out purasu arufa, oh, they just mean like plus, something extra, something bonus, right? The fact that plus is in there also helps a lot, in figuring out what this means. Now, it's also important to note that plus alpha is essentially just wasei eigo. And wasei eigo is this very interesting linguistic phenomenon that happens in Japanese. It literally means made in Japan English. Eigo is English. Wasei means made in Japan. And what this is English sounding words that are actually Japanese. And in the case of plus alpha, we have two words coming together to create this term. Puras, which comes from plus, and then alpha, which comes from alpha, as in alpha, beta, gamma, sigma, blah, 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 like the letter of the Greek alphabet. And so if you get plus alpha, you put it together, yes, it sounds like English, and in a way, both words are English. But if you were to say this to somebody that doesn't know any Japanese, let's just say in the US, they might guess that you're using some sort of mathematical term, right? Because it sounds like maybe something algebraic, like you're talking about plus some unknown number, like plus alpha, maybe beta plus alpha equals 6. Like you're talking about some sort of formula, right? But that's not what it means in Japanese. Like I said, it means just something bonus, something a little extra, something good that is tacked on to whatever it is that the person is talking about. So two different meanings. So that's why it's made in Japan English, right? It looks like English, it sounds like English, but it has a meaning that is all to its own. It's totally unique to this word in Japan, and you would not necessarily be able to guess that if you were to use the same term in English. It just would sound weird, right? So I will get into a couple specific examples of how this is used. I will give you some actual real world usage of these terms. But before I get to that, I want to discuss where this term came from, because there's an interesting little backstory to it, but it's also one of those very shaky etymologies that come up on this show, because etymologies are often quite shaky. And nevertheless, I think it's a fun story, or just, I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a story. It's a fun little explanation. So apparently, what people say when you look this up in Japanese, and you're going to find this on so many different blog posts and entries and message boards, this is what always comes up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of missing details. And that is, really the main reason why I don't fully believe that this is really true. It might be, some variation of it might be, but yeah, I have my serious doubts about this, and so do some people on the Japanese internet. I found, for example, one person that wrote a very long message board response, basically dissecting this whole thing and saying, yeah, there's no real reliable source explaining this, so this probably isn't true, but we just don't know. So anyway, let me get to the point here. The idea is that plus alpha came from baseball. Okay. So in baseball, there's this thing called the box scoring system. And it just, if you know what I'm talking about, then I guess you're really into baseball. I unfortunately am not. I know kind of the basics of baseball, and I don't know too much beyond that. It's not a sport I follow. And I had to do a little bit of research to kind of understand this and be able to explain it in a more cohesive way. But again, box scoring. If you've ever watched a movie that takes place, let's just say a long time ago, many decades ago, before the advent of like digital scorekeeping, you have this sort of horizontally long rectangle and boxes. In each box, you would write the score, like how many runs around the bases each team scored for that inning, right? And you have 9 innings in a normal baseball game, and you have the top of each inning and the bottom of each inning, right? So if there's a situation in which the home team is leading in the top of the 9th, and then there's no way that the away team can win just mathematically, what you can end up with is the bottom box of the 9th inning just has an X in it, all right? So the bottom of the 9th ends up with an X written on it, and the top of the 9th would have the score. Basically, that X is representing an unplayed inning. Now, here's where the alpha comes into the story. So, if you write in a kind of cursive-y sort of style, you might end up with something that looks like a lowercase alpha. So, specifically, picture this. You have the X, right? So, you start at the top right of the X. You draw that diagonal line to the bottom left, and then without lifting up your piece of chalk or whatever, I guess if you're writing on one of those big scoreboards that they used to use, you might be using chalk. So you go down to the bottom left, and then without lifting up the piece of chalk, you go up to the top left, right? So you connect the two lines in the X, and then from the top left, you draw the diagonal line down to the bottom right. What you end up with is something that kind of looks like a ribbon, or it also kind of looks like one of those Jesus fishes, right? I don't know if anybody remembers those. But yes, it does kind of look like a lowercase alpha in a certain font, in a certain way of writing it. And so the story is that some Japanese person, or maybe multiple Japanese people, saw this, I guess on a scoreboard or somewhere, and they interpreted that X as an alpha. And so maybe they started using it in the newspapers, and it just became this sort of baseball terminology. And somehow that ended up becoming plus alpha. So you see the utter lack of detail here and these kind of like jumps in logic. I don't know. I mean, the X thing for a missing inning, like that seems to be true because I did see that in the English language Wikipedia entry for box scoring. So at least that's true. But the rest, I just could not find like a reliable source. One blog post that I found cited some sort of NHK article, and there was a link there, and I was very happy. But then when I clicked on it, the link was broken. So this is pretty much the bulk of the information that you find when you look in Japanese. One last detail that I think I should point out is that a lot of times these Japanese articles mention that it wasn't just X, but rather people would write plus X. And I couldn't find like some sort of more concrete verification for this because in the English language Wikipedia for box scoring, it doesn't say plus X, it just says X. So I don't know, maybe this is some kind of unique thing to Japan. I don't know enough about baseball to know how they denote everything in Japanese newspapers, for example. But maybe it was plus X, which would make more sense how that would become plus alpha. But even then, how does that end up becoming like something bonus, something extra? When does it make that shift? That is something I am very curious about, but I don't think we may ever know. And if I do stumble across something else, I'll do an update. So interesting story, but certainly not conclusive. And if you tell anyone about this little tidbit, just make sure to make it clear to them that this is something that people say, but it may not be true. Anyway, let's get to a few examples of how you might actually hear C plus alpha being used in Japanese. First, here's a really easy to understand example that I found on YouTube. This is from some sort of bonus to a DVD about some video game thing. Okay, it's some sort of like let's play bonus thing that came as part of a DVD, I guess. And so here, just take a listen.
お土産 DVD オーディオコメンタリー、プラスアルファ編ですね。
So this is basically a bonus audio commentary that comes with this DVD that this guy is talking about. And hen in this case just means chapter or some kind of division. Usually you would hear hen translated as chapter. There's many hens, the most famous of which means like weird or something along those lines, strange, but this is different kanji, different word. So plus arufa hen, the bonus chapter, the extra chapter, right? The extra thing that came as a bonus of this DVD, right? So very easy to understand, plus arufa hen. But here's another example of how you might hear it used.
多分子供向けの読み聞かせっていう時点でこう何回もこうループで再生されやすいじゃないですか。毎晩聞くみたいな。で、プラスアルファで多分子供向けにその英語の絵本を読み聞かせする、奥さん とか、その母親の方ですね。多分所得高い方だと思うんですね。
Just in case you couldn't make out what he was saying, he said de plus alpha de. And the de there is being used as a kind of connector, and plus alpha in and of itself is also kind of as a connector here. So it's a very interesting usage and not really what you're going to hear too often, but it's not a weird usage. It's just relatively rare. But before I explain, let me explain who this guy is to give you a little bit of context. So this guy goes by the name Manabu. He's a blogger, YouTuber, and basically one of these internet marketing, YouTube blogger guru types, right? I know you must have seen like ads or videos of people like this in English where they say like, you can make $10,000 in a month through blogging or YouTube or whatever. And Manabu, like he kind of does that, although he doesn't promise you a whole bunch of money, but he does kind of give you these strategic tips for turning YouTube or blogging into a business. And one of his videos just popped up in my recommendation for YouTube in the front page, right? And I was wanting to do an episode about Plus Alpha, but I wanted to find clips to use in the episode. And then I just happened to click on the video that ended up giving me this clip. And he used it. I was so happy. And it doesn't surprise me because, like I said, he's like this internet marketing guru kind of guy. And then I watched another one and he used it again. And then I watched another one and he used it again. So this is kind of like the way he speaks. As I said, like it's this kind of slick marketing sort of word. And how he's using it here is actually pretty interesting in that I would translate what he said as something like, and as an added benefit, something like that. So again, benefit, added, it all goes back to that sort of plus, extra, something on top of something that I've been saying throughout this episode, right? It's just that he's using it in a slightly more creative way, but at the same time, this guy is like this marketing guy, so this kind of gives him that aura. This is the way that he speaks. If you were to start speaking like this, people would say like, who are you? Like, are you trying to sell me something? So he was specifically arguing about how much audio content is about to just explode in Japan, and he's trying to get you to podcast or create audio content, right? And by you, I mean the viewer of his video. And so he was just connecting two pieces of his argument by saying de plus alpha de. And then after the de comes that added benefit that you get from creating this specific type of content. He's actually referring to like content where people are reading children's books. And so by producing that kind of content, people actually loop it, and because, kids want to hear it multiple times. And then the added benefit is that the listeners of this kind of content, or rather the parents of the children that are listening to this kind of content, tend to be a little bit more wealthy. They have a little bit more income. And so somehow you can monetize that. That's in very simple terms, that's more or less what he's saying. So yeah, that is the added benefit, the plus alpha. Now, one last example.
プラスアルファとして割引購入券がつきます。
All right, so this one I used a text-to-speech generator to create because I couldn't find any more examples, but I did find some written examples. And what this one is saying is, as a bonus, you're going to get a coupon. So, plus alpha として in this case means like as a, plus alpha, as a bonus. 割引購入券 is the long Japanese way to say coupon. And then つきます, which in this case means like it comes with a coupon, right? So there you go, right? That is plus alpha. There's many creative ways to use it, but at least now you know what it means and maybe where it came from, maybe baseball, but again, yeah, don't take my word for it because I don't even believe that. But yeah, there you go, Japanese plus alpha. And I think it's also used in Street Fighter too, like Street Fighter EX plus alpha or something like that. So you do see this pop up from time to time. I personally think it has this kind of cool vibe to it in certain use cases when somebody is not in the process of trying to sell me something. Because when I hear that in that sort of context, I go like, oh, okay, this is like a salesperson, right? But yeah, anyway, thank you for listening and see you next time on Japanese Plus Alpha. All right, so here's a little bonus for you. プラマイゼロ プラマイゼロ. And this is a term that I've heard used before, but I thought it was nice to add to this episode because it's kind of connected to plus alpha in the fact that it has plus in it, but they're not like directly related and the meaning is different. But you may be wondering, wait, プラマイゼロ doesn't have プラス in it. Yes, it does, because the プラthat プラ comes from プラス. And the マイ in プラマイゼロ comes from マイナス. And ゼロ comes from 0. So プラスマイナスゼロ plus minus 0 プラマイゼロ. It gets shortened, right? You cut off that す and the す and you end up with プラマイゼロ. Now, what does this mean? It's actually fairly easy to understand. It's almost there spelled out for you, plus minus 0. So what it means is in the end, you don't lose anything. You know, it's a no plus, no minus, no win, no loss, no benefit, no loss. You're just there, you know, it all balances out. It all works out. Things cancel each other out. And of course, I wanted to find a real world example whenever possible. I like to include those. And I found this silly video of this Japanese guy who was quite inebriated. He was drinking quite a while. He says it himself. And then he decides to make a meal for his shime. And this shime thing is this last thing you eat at the end of the night after you're done drinking. That's your shime. And a lot of times it's some kind of noodle dish. And what he did was he made saba soba, which soba noodles, right? And saba is mackerel. So he kind of ends the video by saying, well, I was drinking all day. That's unhealthy. But I finished the day off with eating some saba, which is healthy. So in the end, it all works out. They cancel each other out. Like the entire day of drinking cancels itself out because I ate, actually, he says he eats saba in the morning too. And then before he goes to bed, he eats saba too. So the goodness of the fish cancels out the badness of the sake. So anyway, take a listen.
だからね、プラマイゼロ。よ体に悪いことをしてるけれども、いいこともしてるので、プラマイゼロということにしましょう。よ
Obviously, it's a joke. You can hear him laughing there too. So, yeah, he's not taking himself too seriously. But there you go. You know, プラマイゼロ. That is a word that you can use in certain situations. Although I can't say that I've ever used it, but also those kinds of situations don't pop up that often. But yeah, at least if you hear it, you'll know what it means. And one last thing, just one tiny thing here. Apparently, there was a daytime variety show that aired in Japan, and it was called Waido Shou Plus Alpha. So, yeah, plus alpha in the title, right? According to the Japanese Wikipedia entry, it ran from 1972 to 1982. I found a clip of it online, and it seems like a pretty standard daytime variety show. Like, there was an interview and kind of like some comedic skit-like things going on. But anyway, that's not really that important. The only reason I bring this up is because the theme song does have plus alpha in it. So I'm just going to close this out by playing that song.